Have you ever wondered what it truly takes to survive a terrifying encounter with a psychopath? Today, we're peeling back the psychological layers of a scenario no one hopes to face, being taken hostage. Join us as we explore expert-backed survival strategies, the unsettling traits of psychopathy, and how maintaining your composure could be the key to staying alive. This episode is a collaborative exploration combining insights from various experts, and the voice you're hearing represents this collective perspective. This episode blends chilling case studies with actionable psychological insights to empower you with knowledge that could make all the difference in a crisis.
All right, so this episode's going to be a little bit creepy, a little bit unnerving.
Yeah.
We're diving deep into surviving your first day as a hostage by a psychopath. A psychological guide.
Oh, wow.
That title alone, I think, is enough to make anyone's skin crawl.
Yeah, just a little bit.
But, honestly, I think understanding how to deal with a psychopath, especially in a worst-case scenario, like being taken hostage, that could actually save your life.
I think you're right. I think that's the point of a deep dive like this, is to really explore these ideas and see how we can apply them to our lives.
Absolutely. And the thing that I think is so unsettling about this is that psychopaths aren't always those, obvious over-the-top villains that we see in the movies.
Right. They can be very good at hiding who they really are.
Right.
They're masters of disguise using charm and manipulation.
So we're talking about more than just, the average criminal here.
Right.
What exactly defines someone as a psychopath clinically?
So clinically, psychopathy is characterized by a very specific set of traits.
Okay.
And these traits can be things like superficial charm, but masking much deeper issues, blatant disregard for the truth, and a complete absence of remorse.
Wow.
And Dr. Robert Hare, who's a pioneer in criminal psychology, he created a checklist to pinpoint these traits.
Okay.
And it's not for the faint of heart, let me tell you.
I can imagine.
Imagine someone who can lie so convincingly, appear genuinely remorseful, even shed tears, all while feeling absolutely nothing.
Wow.
That's the level of deception that we're dealing with here.
So it's almost like they're playing a character, but the character is a master manipulator.
Exactly. They're playing a role.
Right.
And that is what makes them so dangerous in a hostage situation, because that lack of empathy that makes their actions so unpredictable and potentially very violent.
Right.
They might make promises. They might feign concern.
Right.
All while plotting their next move.
So let's just say, God forbid, anyone ever finds themselves in this horrifying situation.
Right.
What are some of the things that that this source recommends for, increasing your chances of survival?
Well, the most crucial strategy,
Okay.
and perhaps one of the most difficult to execute, is to maintain your composure.
Really?
Yeah. So psychopaths, as Blair's 2005 research highlighted, they often thrive on the emotional responses of their victims.
Wait, so you're saying if I freak out, that actually gives them more power?
It's almost like you're handing them a loaded weapon.
Wow.
Because it reinforces their sense of control.
Yeah.
And it might even encourage them to escalate the situation.
So in a situation where every instinct is screaming panic, how do you even begin to stay calm?
It takes immense mental discipline.
Right.
But techniques like deep breathing can really help.
Okay.
So you want to inhale deeply through your nose.
Okay.
Hold for a few seconds.
Okay.
And exhale slowly through your mouth.
Okay.
This can help regulate your heart rate, and it'll bring that anxiety down a little bit.
Okay, so just really focusing on the breath.
Yeah. And there's also this thing called mental grounding.
Mental grounding.
Where you focus on your immediate surroundings.
Okay.
So you're like, what do I see? What do I hear? What do I smell? What do I feel?
Interesting.
And that can help pull you out of that swirling panic and bring you back to the present moment.
So it's almost like a mindfulness exercise.
Exactly.
Interesting. Okay.
Yeah, and it's about projecting this image of cooperation.
Okay.
But not utter submission.
Yeah.
It's a balance. It's a really difficult balance to strike.
So no begging, pleading, or hysterics, but also don't let them just walk all over you.
Right.
That's a lot to process in the heat of the moment.
Yeah, it is. And that leads us to another crucial point.
Okay.
Assessing the psychopath's motivation.
Okay, so this is where I feel like I would probably freeze up.
Yeah.
How do you even figure out what they want when your heart is pounding out of your chest?
Well, it's like a high-stakes poker game where your life is on the line.
Oh, gosh.
You need to be incredibly observant.
Okay.
So a psychopath's actions, their words, even seemingly insignificant details,
can
reveal their underlying objective.
Okay.
And a study that was done back in 1998 by Patrick and Zempolich revealed just how diverse these motives can be.
Interesting.
From revenge and power to just straight up financial gain.
Okay.
And the way a psychopath behaves will differ dramatically depending on what they're after.
Can you give me for instance, how would a psychopath motivated by revenge act differently from one who wants money?
So let's say the hostage situation is a bank robbery.
Okay, classic.
The psychopath who is focused on money is likely to be more pragmatic, even somewhat negotiable.
Right.
Their priority is getting the cash and getting out.
Okay.
But a psychopath driven by revenge, they might be fixated on causing harm, prolonging the situation, and making their victims suffer.
So if you can figure out what's driving them, you might be able to anticipate their next move.
Exactly.
Oh, that's terrifying, but also makes a strange sort of sense.
Now, this next strategy might sound a little counterintuitive. And I can't stress enough how risky it is.
Okay.
But sometimes attempting to forge a human connection, however superficial, can potentially reduce immediate harm.
Wait, are you suggesting that I try to befriend my captor?
No, not befriending in the true sense, no.
Okay.
Remember, these individuals lack the capacity for genuine empathy.
Right.
But think about the phenomenon of Stockholm Syndrome,
Okay.
where hostages develop an emotional bond with their captors.
That's so bizarre.
It is a bizarre phenomenon.
Yeah.
But it highlights how even under extreme duress, creating a semblance of familiarity can sometimes shift the dynamic.
So are you saying I should try to find common ground with someone who might be plotting to harm me?
Well, it's a delicate dance,
Yeah.
and there's no guarantee that it'll work.
Okay.
But think back to the Normal Store robbery in 1973.
Okay.
The hostages who engaged with the captors, even subtly agreeing with non-threatening statements, found themselves being treated less harshly.
Interesting.
Yeah, so it's about humanizing yourself in their eyes.
Okay.
Becoming more than just a target.
So maybe offer a compliment on their watch or agree with a comment about the weather.
Sure.
All while secretly planning my escape route.
Exactly.
Okay, got it.
So maintaining that calm eye contact, using a soothing tone of voice.
Okay.
These can all contribute to a perception of less threat.
Okay.
But again, I cannot emphasize enough that this is a high-risk strategy to be used with extreme caution.
It seems like walking a tightrope.
It is.
Too much compliance and you just become a passive victim.
Right.
But defiance could trigger aggression.
You got it.
How do you find that balance?
You're right. It is a very, very difficult balance.
Yeah.
So we need to talk about strategic compliance.
Strategic compliance. Okay.
Yeah. So you're not surrendering your will.
Right.
You are choosing your battles very carefully.
Okay.
And Zimbardo's work on power dynamics, particularly the Stanford Prison experiment, that revealed how quickly passivity can dehumanize a person.
I'm thinking back to that experiment where the guards took on increasingly authoritative roles and the prisoners became more and more submissive.
Exactly. And in a hostage situation, you want to avoid becoming completely powerless.
Right.
So you comply with commands that don't jeopardize your safety.
Okay.
But you also assert yourself in very subtle ways.
So I could comply with a demand to sit down, but maybe ask for a glass of water.
Yeah.
It shows I'm not an immediate threat, but I'm still maintaining some level of individuality.
Exactly. You're threading that needle.
Yeah.
You're constantly assessing the situation and adapting your approach.
This is mentally exhausting just thinking about it.
Yeah.
And speaking of manipulation, I'm reminded of Dr. Kevin Dutton's book, The Wisdom of Psychopaths.
Oh, yeah?
Where he highlights just how skilled these individuals are at using manipulation to get what they want.
Right.
To achieve their goals.
So that brings us to another crucial survival strategy.
Which recognizing those manipulation tactics.
Exactly. Because psychopaths, they are masters of deception.
Yeah.
Be prepared for sudden threats, emotional outbursts, even displays of vulnerability.
Oh, wow.
All calculated to provoke a reaction and gain control.
So even if they seem to be losing control or breaking down or getting really angry.
It could all be part of the act.
It's all an act.
Yeah, so don't let their manufactured emotions dictate your mental state.
Wow.
Stay vigilant, stay grounded.
Yeah.
Separate their performance from reality.
It's like playing 4D chess against a grandmaster who can just change the rules of the game at any moment.
You got it.
And even if you manage to navigate those treacherous waters, there's still the psychological toll of the experience itself to contend with. Because even if you escape physically unharmed, the mental and emotional scars can run very deep.
Oh, yeah. And that's what we're going to be exploring in part 2
Okay.
of our deep dive.
So we're going to be talking about those long-term effects.
Yeah, we're talking about a range of potential short-term effects, too.
Okay.
Like hypervigilance. They're like constant feeling that danger is lurking around every corner.
Yeah.
Acute stress.
Right.
With its physical manifestations like racing heart, sweating, intrusive thoughts.
Right.
It's an overwhelming assault on your senses and your psyche.
And what about the long-term implications?
Yeah.
Does the trauma ever really go away?
Well, that's what we'll be exploring in part 2 of our deep dive. The journey to healing can be a long and challenging one,
Right.
with potential for long-term consequences, such as post-traumatic stress disorder or PTSD,
Right.
depression, survivor's guilt,
Yeah.
and something called learned helplessness.
Oh, wow. Okay, this is all a lot to absorb, but it feels crucial to understand just in case.
Absolutely. Knowledge, especially in a situation like this,
Right.
it can be the difference between surviving and subs.
And not Mia. So before we delve into those potential long-term psychological effects, what are the key takeaways our listeners should remember from this first part of our deep dive?
I'd say the first is adaptability.
Okay.
There's no single right way to respond to a psychopath.
Okay.
You have to constantly assess the situation, read their behavior,
Okay.
and adjust your approach accordingly.
Be water, my friend, flowing around the obstacles.
In a way, yes.
Okay, so adaptability is key. What else?
Never, ever give up hope.
Okay.
Cling to that image of survival, of being reunited with your loved ones.
Right.
That flicker of hope can be incredibly powerful,
Yeah.
even in the darkest of moments.
Hope is essential. What else?
Seek support.
Okay.
Trauma-focused therapy, particularly a method called EMDR,
EMDR.
which stands for eye movement desensitization and reprocessing.
Okay.
That can be immensely helpful in processing the experience
Right.
and beginning the healing process.
And we'll be talking more about that in part 2.
We will.
So remember, if you ever find yourself in this unthinkable situation,
Right.
be adaptable, hold on to hope, and seek help when you're safe.
And that brings us to a rather chilling thought. We've been discussing surviving the first day,
Yeah.
because statistically, that's when the risk is the highest.
Right.
But imagine the mental fortitude required to survive long-term captivity by a psychopath.
Whoa. That takes the concept of resilience to a whole other level.
It does.
And on that note, I think we need to pause here.
Okay.
Join us for part 2 of this deep dive, where we'll explore the long-term effects of this kind of ordeal
Right.
and the steps you can take to heal.
I'll see you there.
Until then, stay safe, stay curious, and stay tuned.
Okay.
Okay, so we're back.
Welcome back.
And I gotta say, that last part was intense.
It was heavy stuff.
Yeah. I don't know about you, but I'm still feeling the weight of that conversation.
Yeah, it's a lot to take in.
But, our goal isn't to scare anyone. It's really to equip our listeners with, knowledge that could make a real difference
Exactly.
in a crisis. And that includes understanding the long-term psychological effects.
The lasting impact.
Right.
The scars that don't always fade.
Right. Even when you're physically free.
We touched on PTSD and depression and survivor's guilt.
Right.
But there's another layer that often gets overlooked,
Huh.
and that is the impact on relationships
Oh, yeah.
and the ability to trust.
That makes total sense after experiencing something so violating, so deeply unsettling.
Yeah.
I can't imagine how you wouldn't be changed.
It really makes you question everything and everyone around you.
Right.
The world suddenly feels like a much more dangerous place.
I can see how that would lead to, hypervigilance.
Yeah.
That constant state of alertness, always scanning for threats, even in safe environments.
Exactly. And that hypervigilance can make it incredibly difficult to form new relationships.
Yeah.
You might struggle to let people in,
Yeah.
to trust that they won't hurt you.
It's almost like an invisible wall has been erected,
Yeah.
separating you from the world, from even those closest to you.
It's a powerful image.
And even existing relationships can suffer
They can.
because loved ones may not fully grasp the depths of what you've been through. And it can be really hard to articulate those invisible wounds that you carry.
It is. And that's why seeking professional help is so crucial.
So let's talk more about that.
Okay.
You mentioned EMDR in the last part.
Yes.
Can you explain what that is and how it can help someone who's dealing with this kind of trauma?
EMDR stands for eye movement desensitization and reprocessing.
Okay.
It's a type of therapy that has shown really remarkable success in treating trauma.
Okay.
Essentially, it involves recalling those traumatic memories
Right.
while simultaneously engaging in bilateral stimulation,
What's that?
usually eye movements guided by the therapist,
Okay.
but it can also involve tapping or sounds.
So what's the purpose of the eye movements or the tapping?
So think of it this way. Traumatic memories,
Okay.
like tangled knots of emotions and sensations stored in the brain.
Okay.
EMDR helps to untangle those knots,
Okay.
reprocessing the memories in a way that reduces their emotional intensity and the negative beliefs that are associated with them.
So instead of those memories having so much power over you, triggering flashbacks and anxiety, they become more like just memories.
Exactly. They lose their sharp edges.
Yeah.
Their ability to send you spiraling back into that state of fear and helplessness.
That sounds incredibly liberating.
It can be.
Are there other types of therapy that can be helpful for survivors of this kind of trauma?
Absolutely. Cognitive behavioral therapy, or CBT,
Okay.
is another great option.
Okay.
It focuses on identifying and changing those negative thought patterns and behaviors
Okay.
that contribute to anxiety, depression, and other mental health challenges.
So if you're constantly having thoughts like, I'm not safe or it's all my fault,
Yeah.
CBT can help you challenge those thoughts
They
and
definitely try.
replace them with more positive and realistic ones.
It gives survivors a sense of control,
Right.
a feeling that they can actively participate in their own healing.
So it sounds like therapy is really about reclaiming your life,
It is.
taking back the power that was stolen from you during that hostage situation.
Yeah.
What about support groups?
Support groups are fantastic.
I can imagine connecting with others who've been through something similar
Right.
could be incredibly helpful.
They can be so helpful.
Yeah.
Sharing your story, hearing the stories of others can reduce those feelings of isolation and shame.
Yeah,
It's a powerful reminder that you're not alone,
right.
that healing is possible,
Even from the deepest wounds?
even from the deepest wounds.
So for someone who's gone through this, what's the first step toward healing?
I would say the most important step is to acknowledge the impact of the experience.
Okay.
Don't try to minimize it or pretend it didn't happen.
Right.
It's okay to not be okay.
Okay.
Allow yourself to feel the pain, the fear, the anger,
Yeah.
all those difficult emotions that come with trauma.
So don't bottle it up or try to be strong.
No.
Let those emotions flow.
Let them flow.
Okay.
And then reach out for help.
Okay.
Talk to a therapist, join a support group, confide in a trusted friend or family member.
Right.
There's no shame in seeking support. In fact, it takes incredible courage to ask for help.
And remember, healing is not a linear process.
It's not.
It's a journey, not a destination.
Exactly.
There will be good days and bad days.
Yeah,
Steps forward and steps back.
you got it.
Be patient with yourself.
Yeah.
And celebrate even the smallest victories.
Now I think it's time we shift gears a bit
Okay.
and explore the incredible power of resilience.
Resilience, you mean like the ability to bounce back from adversity?
Yeah.
I'll admit, after everything we've discussed,
I know.
it's hard to imagine how someone could ever truly recover from this kind of experience.
I understand.
But it sounds like it is possible.
It is.
So it's not just about enduring the trauma, it's
Right.
about using it to grow and evolve.
Beautifully put.
So how do you cultivate resilience?
Well,
Is it something you're born with, or can it be learned?
that's a question that researchers have been grappling with for decades. And the good news is
Yeah.
resilience is not a fixed trait. It's a muscle that can be strengthened over time.
So how do we work out that resilience muscle?
One of the most effective ways is to focus on building strong social connections.
Okay.
Having a supportive network of friends and family can provide a buffer against stress and adversity.
But we were just talking about how trauma can damage trust and make it difficult to connect with others.
It's about finding those safe and supportive relationships.
Okay.
The people who will listen without judgment,
Right.
who will offer comfort without trying to fix you.
Right.
It's about allowing yourself to be vulnerable,
Yeah.
to let people in, even if it feels scary.
So even though trust is a challenge, it's still important to reach out and connect with others.
Human connection is essential for healing.
What else can we do to build resilience?
Another key factor is developing a sense of purpose.
Okay.
This might involve finding meaning in your experience,
Right.
helping others who've gone through similar trauma,
Yeah.
or pursuing a passion that gives you a sense of fulfillment.
So it's about finding something bigger than yourself.
Yes.
Something that motivates you to keep going even when things are tough.
Exactly. And it doesn't have to be some grand, life-altering purpose.
Right.
It can be as simple as taking care of your physical and mental health,
Okay.
volunteering in your community, or spending time in nature.
It's about finding those things that nourish your soul
Exactly.
and remind you that there's still beauty and goodness in the world.
Now, that brings us to another important aspect of resilience.
Okay.
Self-care.
Self-care? That sounds a little indulgent.
I know a lot of people think that.
Isn't that just about pampering yourself?
It's not about being selfish or ignoring the hard stuff.
Okay.
It's about recognizing that you can't pour from an empty cup.
Right.
You need to take care of your basic needs.
Right.
Getting enough sleep, eating nutritious foods, exercising regularly,
Okay.
engaging in activities that bring you joy.
So it's about treating yourself with the same kindness and compassion that you would offer to a loved one who is hurting.
Exactly, especially after experiencing something as traumatic as being held hostage by a psychopath.
Right.
Your body and mind need time to heal.
Yeah.
And self-care is an essential part of that process.
This is all making so much sense.
Good.
So building resilience is about cultivating strong connections,
Yes.
finding purpose, and
Yeah.
practicing self-care.
You got it.
What else should we know about this powerful force?
One more thing.
Okay.
Resilience isn't about being happy all the time.
Okay.
It's about acknowledging the pain, the fear, the anger, all those difficult emotions that come with trauma, and still finding a way to move forward.
So it's okay to not be okay.
It is.
It's okay to have bad days.
It's part of the process.
right.
It's about finding that balance between honoring your pain and choosing to live a full and meaningful life.
That's a really powerful message.
It is.
And it leads to a question that's been on my mind this whole time.
Okay, I'm curious.
How do you find meaning and purpose in such a senseless act of violence?
That is the question, isn't it?
How do you make sense of something that just seems so fundamentally wrong?
That's a profound question,
It is.
and one that doesn't have an easy answer.
Right.
But I think part of finding meaning is about recognizing that even in the darkest of times, there's always hope.
Mm-hmm.
There's always the possibility for growth, for healing, for transformation.
So it's about finding those glimmers of light in the darkness.
Yeah.
Those moments of beauty and grace that remind us that even in the face of terrible suffering, life goes on.
Beautifully said.
And those glimmers might be the realization that you're stronger than you thought,
Yes.
or the gratitude for the people who supported you through it,
Um,
or the commitment to helping others who've experienced similar trauma.
exactly.
It's about finding those silver linings even in the midst of the storm.
You've got it. And that brings us to a concept that might seem counterintuitive at first.
Okay, what's that?
Post-traumatic growth.
Post-traumatic growth.
You mean you can actually grow from trauma? It might sound strange,
It does sound a little strange.
but research has shown that some people who experience trauma actually report positive changes in their lives afterward.
Like what kind of changes?
They might develop a greater appreciation for life,
Okay.
stronger relationships,
Okay.
a deeper sense of empathy,
Okay.
a newfound sense of purpose.
Wow.
They might even experience spiritual growth or a shift in their values.
So it's like the trauma, while undeniably painful, also serves as a catalyst for personal transformation.
That's one way to look at it.
Like a crucible that forges a new, stronger version of yourself.
That's a powerful way to put it.
That's incredible.
It's not about minimizing the suffering or suggesting that trauma is a good thing.
Right.
It's about recognizing that even in the face of adversity, the human spirit has an incredible capacity for growth and resilience.
Wow. We've covered so much ground in this deep dive, understanding the psychopath, strategies for surviving that initial encounter,
Right.
the long-term effects of the trauma,
Yeah.
the power of resilience, and now the possibility of post-traumatic growth.
It's been quite a journey.
What's next on our deep dive agenda?
Well, I think it's time we shift our focus to the captor.
Okay.
We've talked a lot about the survivor's experience.
Yeah.
But what about the mind of the psychopath?
Okay.
What makes them tick?
Right.
What motivates their actions?
Okay, now we're getting into the really creepy stuff.
Yeah,
To be honest, I'm a little scared,
I understand.
but also incredibly fascinated.
It's a natural reaction.
I'm ready to dive into the depths of the psychopathic mind.
Excellent, because to truly understand how to survive an encounter with a psychopath,
Right.
we need to understand their world,
Right, as unsettling as it may be.
as unsettling as it may be.
This is where things get really interesting, folks.
It does.
Buckle up and get ready for part 3 of our deep dive, where we explore the dark side of the human psyche.
We'll see you there.
All right, so we're back and, ready to venture into the chilling depths of the psychopathic mind.
I think that's a good way to put it.
I am both curious and a little terrified, to be honest.
Yeah, it's fascinating stuff, but it's also pretty creepy.
It is pretty creepy. Is it even possible to really understand someone who lacks empathy?
That's a good question.
Someone who can just manipulate and harm others without a shred of remorse.
It's one of the most perplexing questions in psychology.
All right.
And there's no easy answer.
Right.
But, by studying their behavior, their brain activity, and even their genetic predispositions,
Okay.
we can start to piece together a picture of what might be going on in their minds.
So where do we even begin with this?
Well, let's revisit Dr. Hare's psychopathy checklist that we talked about earlier.
Okay.
It outlines a set of traits
Right.
that are commonly observed in psychopaths.
Okay.
Things like glibness and superficial charm,
Right.
a grandiose sense of self-worth,
Okay.
pathological lying,
Right.
and a profound lack of remorse or guilt.
So it's almost like they're missing a fundamental part of what makes us human. Yeah.
That ability to connect with others on an emotional level.
I think that's a good way to put it. They seem to lack that capacity
Right.
for genuine emotional connection.
So when they show emotion like rage or charm or whatever,
Right.
is it all just an act?
Well, it's tough to say for certain,
Yeah.
but research suggests that their emotional responses are often very shallow and fleeting.
Interesting.
Imagine a pond with barely a ripple on the surface,
Okay.
while underneath, there's no depth, no real substance.
Right.
They might mimic emotions to get what they want,
Right.
but they don't experience them in the same way that most people do.
That is so disturbing.
Yeah.
It's like they're wearing a mask, pretending to be human,
Yeah.
but there's nothing behind it.
Right.
Just a void.
And that's what makes them so dangerous.
Right.
Because they can be so convincing.
Yeah.
They can weave themselves into your life, they gain your trust,
Right.
and then exploit you for their own personal gain, all without a second thought.
It's chilling to think about being caught in a web spun by someone who sees you as nothing more than a pawn in their game.
Right. And the stakes in their game can be terrifyingly high.
Yeah.
We're talking about control, power, dominance.
Right.
And for some psychopaths, it's about inflicting pain and suffering on others.
That's the part I just can't wrap my head around.
It's hard to fathom.
Why would someone want to do that?
That's the million-dollar question.
What drives them to hurt others?
And one that scientists and researchers are still trying to unravel.
Right.
Some believe it's a complex interplay of genetic predispositions and environmental factors.
Yeah.
A perfect storm of nature and nurture.
Right.
Others point to abnormalities in brain structure and function,
Okay.
particularly in areas associated with empathy, emotional regulation, and impulse control.
So, like, their brains are wired differently, making it difficult, if not impossible, for them to develop empathy
Right.
and control their impulses.
That's the current thinking.
So if we can't really fully grasp why they do what they do, how can we protect ourselves?
How can we spot those danger signs before it's too late?
I think awareness is our greatest weapon.
Okay.
Understanding the traits, the tactics, the motivations of a psychopath
Right.
can help us recognize those red flags early on.
So give me some examples. What specific red flags should we be watching out for?
One of the most telling signs is a disconnect between their words and their actions.
Okay.
They might be incredibly charming and say all the right things,
Yeah.
but their behavior will often betray their true nature.
Okay.
It's like a wolf in sheep's clothing. The disguise is convincing,
Right.
but the teeth are still sharp.
So if someone is constantly flattering you, showering you with attention,
Yeah,
but their actions are consistently selfish and manipulative,
right.
that's a red flag.
That's a big red flag.
Okay.
They might be weaving a web of deception to lure you in.
Right.
You should always trust your gut feeling.
Right.
If something feels off.
Yeah.
If you get a sense that someone isn't who they seem,
Right.
listen to that inner voice. It's often your best defense.
What about those who aren't as outwardly charming?
Sure.
Are there signs for those types as well?
Definitely look for patterns of impulsive behavior, a disregard for rules and social norms,
Okay.
and a lack of responsibility or remorse for their actions.
Nope.
It's as if they're living in a world without consequences,
Right.
where their needs and desires always come first.
So if someone is constantly blaming others for their mistakes,
Yeah.
refusing to take responsibility for their actions,
Right.
that's a warning sign.
That's a big warning sign. And don't be afraid to set boundaries.
Okay.
Psychopaths are masters at pushing limits, testing how far they can go.
So stand your ground, say no,
Yeah,
and if
okay.
necessary, walk away from the situation.
Absolutely. Your safety and well-being are paramount.
Right.
Never forget that.
Wow, we've covered so much in this deep dive.
We have.
Understanding the psychopath strategies for surviving an encounter,
Right.
the long-term impact of trauma, the the power of resilience.
It's been a lot.
And the importance of recognizing those red flags.
Right.
What's the single most important thing you want our listeners to take away from all of this?
Knowledge is power.
Okay.
Understanding the nature of psychopathy, their tactics, their motivations can empower you to make safer choices and protect yourself.
Okay.
But even more importantly, remember this, even in the darkest of times, the human spirit is capable of incredible resilience.
That's a really powerful message.
There is always hope, there is always healing,
Yeah.
and there is always the possibility for growth.
And that is a perfect way to wrap up this intense but incredibly insightful journey.
It has been a journey.
Thank you for guiding us through this.
It's been my pleasure.
And to our listeners, thank you for braving this deep dive with us.
Thank you for listening.
We know this wasn't easy, listener, but we hope you found it valuable.
I hope so.
Remember, stay informed, stay vigilant, and never underestimate the strength within yourself.
Good advice.
Until next time, stay curious, stay safe, and keep those minds engaged.
If you found today's deep dive eye-opening, don't keep it to yourself. Subscribe to Cognitive Curves for more episodes that illuminate the darker corners of the human psyche. Share this episode with those who would appreciate these insights, and drop us a comment with your thoughts. Your safety and awareness are invaluable. Stay informed, stay safe, and keep exploring the complexities of the mind.